That worn-out leather bag. I thought you were housekeeping. Veronica's voice rang out, sharp and high-pitched, like a crystal glass shattering in the refined stillness of Azure Zen Spa, leaving behind a jagged crack of contempt among glances too stunned to form a response. Zuri Brown stepped into Azure Zen Spa in a simple white button-down and faded jeans like a breeze out of season drifting into an elite forest. No jewelry, no designer labels, just the calm gaze of a woman who had weathered storms. The slight frown on receptionist Jennifer's face was only the beginning. The real blow came with Veronica's razor-sharp glance and syrupy voice laced with disdain. "We have standards here, you understand?" Veronica's eyes slid over Zuri like a fine-edged blade, pausing briefly on the unbranded handbag, tracing every line of the no-name shirt, and finally halting at the quiet steadiness in the eyes of the black woman before her, as though she were appraising an object of lesser value that had wandered in by mistake. Zuri didn't protest. She simply held out her phone in silence, displaying the confirmed booking email, payment completed the night before. They thought they'd just dismissed someone who didn't belong in their world. But what they didn't know was that the game had just begun to turn. Jennifer stares at Zuri's booking confirmation displayed clearly on her computer screen, her fingers hovering over the keyboard like a pianist afraid to strike the wrong keys. The booking details are legitimate and properly processed, but Jennifer's eyes continue darting toward Veronica, who has risen from her throne-like chair and moved closer to the reception desk with the fluid grace of a predator sensing opportunity. "I'm terribly sorry," Jennifer begins, her voice wavering with uncertainty and something that might be guilt, "but there appears to be some kind of technical issue with your reservation in our computer system. The booking isn't showing up properly in our database." Zuri retrieves her smartphone with practiced patience, scrolling through her emails with the efficiency of someone accustomed to solving problems methodically. The booking details are crystal clear on her screen. Premium spa package, $250 prepaid. Confirmation number prominently displayed in bold font. Appointment time clearly specified for this exact moment. "Here's my confirmation email and booking reference number," Zuri says, turning her phone screen toward Jennifer with professional courtesy. "Everything was processed and confirmed yesterday evening. I even received a reminder text this morning about my appointment." Jennifer squints at the phone screen, clearly seeing the legitimate booking documentation, but her eyes immediately dart once again to Veronica, who has positioned herself directly beside the reception desk, like a supervisor overseeing a critical business transaction. "Jennifer, sweetie," Veronica interjects with a voice that drips false maternal concern while carrying undertones of authority. "Is there some kind of problem developing here that needs my attention?" Her tone carries the casual familiarity of someone who considers herself part of the spa's unofficial management structure, someone whose opinions carry weight in decision-making processes. Veronica's gaze sweeps over Zuri again, this time more deliberately and thoroughly, taking in every detail of the casual attire with barely concealed contempt. Her eyes linger on Zuri's simple jeans, her unpretentious handbag, her lack of obvious designer accessories, cataloging each item as evidence of someone who doesn't belong in her rarefied social circle. "You know, Jennifer?" Veronica continues with calculated sweetness. "Azure Zen has always maintained very specific standards regarding our clientele and dress code requirements. We've worked so hard over the years to build and maintain such a carefully curated atmosphere of exclusivity and refinement here." Zuri feels the weighted implication behind those seemingly polite words settling over her like a suffocating blanket, but her voice remains steady and professional despite the growing tension. "I have a confirmed booking with full payment already processed for today's premium spa package. Is there a specific policy or requirement that I'm not meeting?" The question hangs in the perfumed air like a challenge that demands a direct response, impossible to deflect with vague pleasantries or coded language. Zuri's directness cuts through the artificial politeness and forces the real issue into the open. Veronica's laugh carries a sharp edge that could cut glass, revealing the ugly reality beneath her polished exterior. Oh, honey, I think there might be some significant confusion here about what Azure Zen represents. This spa caters to a very particular type of clientele, a very specific demographic and social stratum, if you understand what I mean. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable at one of the more accessible and affordable locations elsewhere in town? The suggestion lands like a physical blow, its racist implications so obvious that even Jennifer looks uncomfortable with the direction this conversation is taking. Zuri recognizes immediately that this isn't about booking systems, dress codes, or spa policies. This is about the color of her skin and the assumptions being made about her worth based solely on her appearance. Several other customers have begun to notice the increasingly tense conversation, their massage appointments and facial treatments temporarily forgotten as they become unwilling witnesses to this unfolding confrontation. Near the treatment rooms, Amanda Chen carefully arranges fresh towels and prepares essential oils for the next clients, but her movements become more deliberate and focused. As she strains to hear every word of the exchange at the front desk, Jennifer appears increasingly uncomfortable, trapped between the clear evidence of Zuri's legitimate booking and the obvious pressure from Veronica, whose monthly spending at the spa represents nearly $15,000 in revenue, money that keeps the lights on, pays staff salaries, and determines whether this location remains profitable. "I'd like to speak with your manager immediately," Zuri states clearly, her tone remaining firm and professional but carrying an undertone of steel that suggests she's not easily intimidated or dismissed. The request is entirely reasonable and proper, but the way Veronica's eyes narrow suggests she views this as an unwelcome escalation that threatens her control over the situation. Manager Kevin emerges from the back office like a man walking toward his own execution, his expression already tense and worried before he fully comprehends the volatile situation developing at his reception desk. Veronica immediately intercepts him with the smooth efficiency of a corporate executive, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper that somehow remains audible to Zuri and other nearby witnesses. "Kevin, darling," Veronica begins with honey-coated authority, "we have an extremely delicate situation here that requires your most careful and diplomatic attention. The reputation and standing of this establishment must be protected at all costs, and I trust you understand the implications of how this matter is handled." Kevin understands the subtext immediately and completely. Veronica Sterling and her carefully cultivated circle of wealthy socialized friends account for nearly 25% of the spa's monthly revenue through their regular bookings, expensive premium treatments, luxury product purchases, and generous tips that supplement his staff's modest salaries. Their continued patronage represents the difference between financial success and potential closure. A vivid memory flashes through Zuri's mind with startling clarity, transporting her across decades and geography. She's 8 years old again, standing on the scorching sidewalk outside the gates of the exclusive Magnolia Hills Swimming Club in Birmingham, Alabama. Her grandmother's weathered but strong hand grips hers tightly, while the club manager, a thin white man in a seersucker suit, explains with practiced politeness why Zuri cannot join the summer swim program, despite her mother's advance payment and completed application. "Baby girl," her grandmother had whispered on that sweltering afternoon, her voice carrying the wisdom of someone who had faced such injustices countless times. "Sometimes this world gonna test your strength and character in ways that ain't fair, that ain't right, that don't make no sense, but don't you ever, ever let them see you break. You hold your head high and remember who you are, not what they think you are or want you to be." That profound lesson had driven Zuri through scholarship applications written by candlelight when the electricity was shut off, through late-night study sessions fueled by determination and cheap coffee, through business school rejections and eventual acceptances, through failed startup attempts that nearly bankrupted her, through investor meetings where she was the only woman and the only person of color in rooms full of skeptical faces, and ultimately to the corner office of the multi-million-dollar company she built from nothing but ambition and relentless work ethic. Returning to the present moment, Kevin attempts diplomatic resolution while carefully avoiding direct confrontation with either party involved in this escalating dispute. I'm absolutely certain we can work out some kind of mutually satisfactory arrangement here. Perhaps we could schedule something for next week, when we have more availability and can provide our full attention to your needs. Zuri's response cuts through his deflection like a laser beam through fog. An arrangement for what exactly? I have a confirmed booking for today, with full payment already processed. What specific policy, procedure, or requirement prevents you from honoring that legitimate booking? Veronica decides this is the perfect moment to make her position absolutely and unmistakably clear to everyone within hearing distance. Kevin, just look at her outfit and presentation. This is Azure Zen Spa, not some strip mall massage parlor or community center wellness clinic. We have an image to maintain, standards to uphold, and expectations to meet. Our discerning clientele expects and deserves a certain level of exclusivity and refinement. The words hang in the perfumed air like toxic fumes, impossible to ignore, reinterpret, or dismiss as anything other than blatant discrimination. Several customers reach for their smartphones, some beginning to record the interaction with growing disbelief and outrage at what they're witnessing in real time. Amanda Chen has gradually moved closer to the front desk area, ostensibly organizing supplies and preparing treatment rooms, but actually positioning herself where she can observe and hear everything that's happening. Her hands shake slightly with remembered trauma as she recalls her own experience of discrimination, the way it felt to be judged as inherently unworthy based solely on appearance and assumptions about social status and belonging. Zuri maintains her remarkable composure, but her voice carries a new edge of steel that suggests her patience has limits that are being rapidly approached. I want absolute and complete clarity about your policies and procedures. What specific criteria are being used to determine whether a paying customer receives the services they've legitimately purchased? Kevin's palms are sweating now, despite the spa's carefully controlled temperature, fully aware that he's navigating a legal and ethical minefield, where every word he speaks could end up as evidence in a discrimination lawsuit that could destroy both his career and the spa's reputation. But Veronica's financial influence over the spa's survival makes refusing her demands equally dangerous from a business perspective. Veronica, emboldened by Kevin's apparent deference to her authority and wealth, becomes more brazen and explicit in her discriminatory statements. Look, honey, some establishments just aren't meant for certain types of people. It's nothing personal against you individually, it's simply business reality and social dynamics. There are plenty of places where you'd fit in much better and feel more comfortable. The tension in the spa reaches a breaking point, as customers and staff members alike recognize they're witnessing something that crosses every conceivable line of human decency, legal compliance, and basic respect for human dignity. Veronica suddenly straightens in her chair like a hunting dog catching a scent, her eyes focusing on Zuri's simple brown leather handbag with theatrical intensity and obvious calculation. "Wait, just 1 minute!" She announces loudly enough for everyone in the reception area and nearby treatment rooms to hear clearly. "Kevin? I think you need to check your security camera footage immediately." Zuri's eyebrows draw together in genuine confusion mixed with growing alarm. "Excuse me? What are you talking about?" Veronica continues her carefully orchestrated performance with growing confidence and dramatic flair, her voice taking on the theatrical quality of someone accustomed to commanding attention and controlling narratives through sheer force of personality and social position. "I noticed some very suspicious and concerning movement near the locker area earlier when I was preparing for my treatment, and now there's an individual present who clearly doesn't belong in this type of establishment. Kevin, I think we need to investigate immediately whether anything valuable has gone missing from the secure areas. The accusation hits the spa's peaceful atmosphere like a thunderbolt, shattering the tranquil ambiance and replacing it with electric tension. Customers gasp audibly, their private conversations stopping mid-sentence as they turn to stare at the unfolding drama with horrified fascination. Kevin reluctantly moves toward the security monitor, his face flushed with embarrassment at being forced into this compromising position. "Are you seriously and directly accusing me of theft?" Zuri's voice remains controlled, but there's an unmistakable note of steel beneath the calm surface. Her posture straightens, and for the first time since entering the spa, her carefully maintained composure shows visible signs of strain. Veronica shrugs with studied casualness, as if discussing something as mundane as the weather rather than attempting to destroy someone's reputation and dignity. "I'm simply saying that coincidences happen and patterns emerge. A person appears who obviously doesn't belong in this type of high-end establishment, and suddenly I find myself concerned about the security and safety of my personal belongings." The racist implications of her words are so blatant and undeniable that even some of Veronica's usual supporters shift uncomfortably in their plush seats, beginning to realize they're witnessing something that goes far beyond acceptable social behavior. But Veronica, intoxicated by her perceived power and the attention she's commanding, continues digging herself deeper into an inescapable hole. "I specifically noticed that my diamond earring case seemed disturbed in my private locker. The positioning was different from how I left it. Kevin, I really think we should call security and have this person thoroughly searched before she's allowed to leave the premises." Amanda Chen reaches her breaking point and can no longer remain silent, despite the very real risk to her employment and financial security. She steps forward, her voice shaking with nervousness but strengthened by moral conviction. "I was cleaning and organizing the locker areas for the entire past hour and a half. I can personally confirm that nothing was taken, disturbed, or even touched inappropriately. I observed everything that happened in that area." Veronica whips around to face Amanda with lightning speed, her mask of civility slipping completely to reveal the ugly truth beneath. "Excuse me? Are you actually questioning my direct personal observation? Are you suggesting that I'm lying about my own belongings?" The threat in Veronica's voice is unmistakable and terrifying. Amanda's continued employment hangs in the balance for daring to contradict a premium customer's account with factual testimony. But Amanda stands her ground with remarkable courage, even as her hands tremble with the enormous risk she's taking, by speaking truth to power. Kevin checks the security footage with obvious reluctance and confirms that nothing was stolen or even inappropriately handled, but the damage to Zuri's dignity and reputation has already been systematically inflicted. The whispered conversations among other customers, the smartphones capturing every moment of humiliation, the assumption of guilt based purely on racial prejudice, it all combines into a moment of profound and calculated degradation. "Well," Veronica says with false magnanimity that makes her cruelty even more obvious, "perhaps I was mistaken about the specific theft allegation, but this entire unfortunate incident proves my original point about maintaining appropriate standards and suitable clientele." Zuri's calm finally shows its first visible crack. Her jaw tightens almost imperceptibly as she processes the full scope and deliberate nature of what just happened to her. "So first you questioned my fundamental right to be here. Then you publicly accused me of theft based on nothing but your racial prejudices, and now you're pretending to be generous and forgiving for admitting you were completely wrong?" Veronica actually seems to enjoy having what she perceives as the upper hand, relishing this moment of perceived victory over someone she considers beneath her social station. "Look, sweetie, I'm actually trying to save you from further embarrassment and humiliation. Kevin, just process her refund and have security escort her out quietly. The situation is becoming increasingly uncomfortable for our legitimate clients." A uniformed security guard approaches reluctantly, clearly uncomfortable with his assigned role in this discrimination, but unwilling to risk his own employment by refusing to follow management's instructions. Zuri looks around at the faces surrounding her, some showing genuine sympathy and concern, others displaying obvious discomfort with the situation, and a disturbing few openly supporting Veronica's discriminatory stance. Amanda whispers urgently to Zuri, her voice filled with solidarity and shared experience. This treatment isn't right. She does this same thing to anyone she thinks doesn't belong here. Zuri nods slightly, acknowledging the support while internally calculating her next move with the strategic precision of someone who has learned to transform adversity into devastating advantage. Veronica, completely intoxicated by her apparent victory and the attention she's commanding, decides to address the entire spa as if delivering an important educational lecture to a captive audience of students. Ladies and gentlemen, this incident is exactly why we choose exclusive establishments like Azure Zen. It's specifically to avoid these kinds of uncomfortable and disruptive situations that compromise the peaceful atmosphere we've all paid premium prices to enjoy. Some customers nod in agreement with her statement, while others look increasingly disturbed and disgusted by the blatant display of prejudice they're witnessing unfold before their eyes. The spa has transformed into a divided battlefield of ideologies, with Veronica positioning herself as the self-appointed guardian of exclusivity, privilege, and social hierarchy. Kevin, sweat beading visibly on his forehead despite the spa's carefully controlled climate, makes another desperate attempt to defuse the rapidly escalating situation before it spirals completely out of control. Perhaps we could resolve this sensitive matter privately in my office, away from other guests who are trying to enjoy their relaxation time. But Veronica is far from finished with her public performance and educational demonstration. No, Kevin, this is actually very important for everyone present to understand clearly. The reputation, standards, and overall atmosphere of this establishment depend absolutely on maintaining certain demographic expectations and social boundaries. We simply cannot allow just anyone to compromise the exclusive environment we've all worked so hard to create and maintain. Zuri, maintaining her remarkable composure while internally preparing for what she knows must come next, takes out her smartphone and begins recording the interaction with steady hands. I want to document this entire conversation for future reference and potential legal proceedings. Veronica's laugh rings out across the spa's reception area like breaking crystal, sharp and cutting and filled with contempt. Oh, please, go ahead and document whatever you want, honey. Record yourself being inappropriate and demanding service where you clearly don't belong. Maybe it'll be educational for you to watch later. A young customer in her 20s, recognizing the historical significance and viral potential of what she's witnessing, begins live streaming the entire confrontation on Instagram Live. Her follower count isn't massive, but the comments section immediately begins flooding with viewers expressing shock, outrage, and disbelief at the obvious discrimination unfolding in real time before their eyes. Zuri notices the live stream beginning but doesn't react or acknowledge it, understanding instinctively that social media exposure could become a powerful ally in the larger battle for justice and accountability. The digital witnesses are multiplying exponentially by the minute as viewers share the stream with their own networks, creating a viral moment that will soon reach far beyond this small spa. Veronica, noticing the phones capturing her words and actions, becomes even more theatrical and dramatic in her delivery, apparently believing that public documentation will vindicate her position rather than expose her bigotry. You see what I mean? This is exactly the kind of disruptive and threatening behavior we don't want in our peaceful sanctuary. Kevin, she's now attempting to intimidate and threaten us with social media exposure because we won't compromise our established standards. Amanda Chen moves closer to Zuri, her voice gaining strength and confidence with each word she speaks. Mrs. Sterling, this treatment is completely wrong and unacceptable. This lady has a legitimate booking and deserves the same basic respect as any other human being. The courage required for Amanda to speak up becomes even more remarkable when considering her vulnerable position as an hourly employee with no job security. Veronica's response reveals the true depths of her sense of entitlement and social superiority. Amanda, sweetheart, you're here to provide services and keep your opinions to yourself, not to counsel guests about where they do or don't belong in society. I'd strongly suggest you focus on your assigned job duties before you find yourself in an unemployment situation you'll deeply regret. The threat to Amanda's livelihood hangs heavy in the perfumed air like a toxic cloud, serving as a stark reminder that speaking up against injustice often comes with very real and potentially devastating consequences. Other staff members watch nervously from the sidelines, knowing they could face similar retaliation if they choose to support what's morally right over what's financially profitable. Undeterred by the growing tension, Veronica continues her monologue with increasing confidence and arrogance. I've been a loyal and valued client of Azure Zen for over 5 years now. I bring my friends here regularly. We book the most expensive treatments available. We purchase premium products, and we tip generously. Kevin understands perfectly well which side pays the bills and keeps this business operational and profitable. She turns back to Zuri with condescending satisfaction painted across her perfectly made-up face. You can try to make this about race if you want to play that tired card, but it's really about class, appropriateness, and understanding natural social boundaries. Some people simply need to accept their proper place in the world's natural hierarchy. The statement is so blatantly racist and offensive that even some of Veronica's previous supporters shift uncomfortably in their seats, finally beginning to recognize that she's crossed lines that cannot and should not be uncrossed by any civilized person. The room falls into a deadly silence as everyone present processes the full implications of what they just heard spoken aloud. The mask has completely slipped away, revealing the ugly truth that was always lurking beneath the surface of polite society. Kevin, desperate to end this escalating disaster before it destroys his career and the spa's reputation, makes a decision that actually makes the situation exponentially worse. Look, maybe we can upgrade your booking to a different location in our sister spa network. We have a downtown property that might be more suitable and appropriate for your particular needs and preferences. Zuri's response is measured but surgically pointed, each word carefully chosen for maximum impact. A different location? Are you actually suggesting that despite having a confirmed booking with full payment already processed, I should be redirected to another establishment based solely on your personal judgment of where someone like me belongs in your worldview? Veronica claps her hands slowly and mockingly, her applause echoing through the silent spa like gunshots. Finally, she's beginning to understand how the real world actually works. Kevin, call your downtown location immediately and explain the situation. I'm absolutely sure they'll be much more accommodating to her particular demographic needs. Other customers begin gathering their belongings and leaving, some unable to tolerate witnessing such blatant discrimination, others uncomfortable with being associated with the ugliness they're observing. Amanda Chen looks like she wants to resign immediately rather than continue working in an environment that enables and rewards such behavior. The live streaming customers' viewer count jumps dramatically as people share the video across multiple social media platforms. Comments pour in expressing outrage and demanding justice, with many viewers asking for the spa's name and location so they can voice their disgust directly to management. Zuri takes a deep breath, her composure still intact but clearly preparing for a strategic response that will change everything. I want to make absolutely certain I understand the complete situation here. Mrs. Sterling, you're claiming that you, as a customer, have the authority and right to determine who does and doesn't belong at this spa. Veronica preens with obvious self-satisfaction, completely unaware of the trap being sought around her. Well, my opinion certainly carries significant weight and influence here. Kevin knows exactly how valuable and important I am to this business's financial success. When someone like me speaks, intelligent people listen carefully. Kevin nods reluctantly. unknowingly sealing his own professional fate with that simple gesture. Zuri's slight smile suggests she knows something profound that neither Veronica nor Kevin has considered. A secret that's about to transform this entire confrontation from humiliation into complete revolution. That's a very interesting and illuminating perspective, Mrs. Sterling. I genuinely appreciate the complete clarity you've provided about your assumptions, your authority, and your worldview. Zuri calmly retrieves her smartphone and dials a number with deliberate precision, her movements unhurried and purposeful. David? Yes, it's Zuri. I'm currently at our Azure Zen location, and we have some extremely serious policy implementation issues that require your immediate personal attention. Veronica scoffs dismissively, rolling her eyes with exaggerated drama and contempt. Oh, please, calling your boyfriend or your lawyer isn't going to help you escape this situation, sweetie. This is the real world, not some fantasy where you get everything you want. Within exactly 7 minutes, David Morrison bursts through the spa's entrance doors, slightly out of breath from rushing across town in response to Zuri's urgent summons. His expensive business suit is slightly wrinkled from his hasty departure, and his eyes scan the reception area with laser focus until they locate Zuri. His face immediately displays a complex mixture of relief at finding her safe and deep concern about whatever situation prompted her emergency call. Ms. Brown, David says as he approaches with obvious deference and professional respect. I came as quickly as humanly possible after receiving your call. Is everything under control here? What are your specific instructions? Veronica interrupts with her characteristic condescension and supreme confidence. Excuse me, but we're in the middle of resolving a customer service situation here that doesn't concern outside parties. This is a private business matter. David glances at Veronica briefly with polite acknowledgement, then immediately returns his complete attention to Zuri, with unmistakable professional deference that speaks of established hierarchy and respect. Ma'am, how would you like me to handle this situation? What are your specific instructions for proceeding? Kevin stares in complete confusion at David's sudden arrival and his formal, respectful manner toward Zuri. David, what are you doing here? This is just a routine customer service issue that we were handling through normal internal procedures. David's expression hardens like concrete as he takes in the complete scene before him. The uncomfortable customers, the nervous staff members, Zuri's calm but tense demeanor, and Veronica's imperious attitude radiating entitlement and superiority. Kevin, I need you to explain to me immediately and in detail why the Chief Executive Officer and founder of Lux Wellness Group is being treated with such blatant disrespect and discrimination in one of our own flagship properties. The words hit the spa's atmosphere like a massive earthquake, sending shockwaves through every person present. Conversations stop mid-sentence, champagne glasses freeze halfway to carefully glossed lips, and the only sound remaining is the gentle trickling of the decorative fountains that suddenly seemed deafeningly loud in the absolute stunned silence. Jasmine. Veronica's face cycles rapidly through confusion, disbelief, dawning comprehension, and finally complete horror as the devastating implications of David's revelation sink into her consciousness like acid. That's completely impossible. She's just... Zuri speaks for the first time since David's dramatic arrival, her voice carrying unmistakable authority despite its continued calm tone. Black? Casually dressed on my day off? Younger than you expected? Not fitting your narrow preconceptions of what a CEO should look like? Amanda Chen covers her mouth with both hands in absolute shock, suddenly realizing with crystal clarity that she just witnessed her ultimate supervisor and company owner being systematically discriminated against in her own business establishment. David addresses Kevin directly, his voice carrying the full weight of corporate authority and barely contained outrage. Can you explain to Ms. Brown exactly why she was denied service, publicly humiliated, and falsely accused of theft at her own spa? Kevin's face drains of all color as understanding crashes over him like a devastating tsunami, destroying everything he thought he knew about this situation. Zuri continues with surgical precision and devastating calm. David, let's be completely clear and specific about what transpired here today. I was denied service not because of any legitimate policy violations, dress code infractions, or booking irregularities, but because Mrs. Sterling decided I didn't belong here, based solely on my race, my appearance, and her personal prejudices. The live streaming customers' viewer count explodes into the tens of thousands as people around the world realize they're witnessing one of the most dramatic reversals of power and justice they've ever seen. Comments flood in, celebrating the revelation and demanding swift consequences for the discrimination. Veronica, still reeling from the devastating shock of her monumental miscalculation, attempts to backtrack desperately. Wait, there's been a terrible misunderstanding here. I never said anything specifically about race. I was just concerned about maintaining standards and ensuring appropriate atmosphere. Zuri calmly retrieves her smartphone and plays back a crystal-clear recording of Veronica's own voice, stating, "Some people need to know their place," and her explicit references to certain demographics and maintaining exclusivity and natural social hierarchy. David's face darkens with each recorded word, his professional composure barely containing his outrage at what he's hearing. "Mrs. Sterling, you've been recorded making explicitly discriminatory statements against our CEO. Kevin, you actively supported these statements and were fully prepared to refuse service to the owner of this establishment." Zuri steps forward, her presence suddenly commanding the entire space with an authority that was always there but is now impossible to ignore or dismiss. "The most fascinating aspect of this entire situation, Mrs. Sterling, is your fundamental assumption that you wielded real power here. You assumed Kevin would choose your money over basic human decency. You assumed that because I dress casually on my personal time, I couldn't possibly have any authority, influence, or significance." Veronica desperately tries to salvage something from the complete wreckage of her assumptions and social standing. "Zuri, Ms. Brown, I had absolutely no idea who you were or what your position was. If I had known about your role here, this misunderstanding never would have occurred." Zuri's response cuts directly to the moral heart of the issue with laser precision. So discrimination is perfectly acceptable as long as the victim doesn't have the power to retaliate effectively? Your apology exists solely because you discovered my position and authority, not because your behavior was fundamentally wrong and harmful. Amanda Chen finds her voice, strengthened and emboldened by witnessing justice beginning to unfold before her eyes. "Mrs. Brown, for whatever it's worth, I tried my best to speak up when I saw what was happening to you." Zuri turns to Amanda with genuine warmth and appreciation, the first real smile she's shown since entering the spa. "Thank you, Amanda. Your moral courage in supporting what's right, despite the very real potential consequences to your employment and financial security, demonstrates exactly the kind of character and integrity we value most in our organization." David retrieves his tablet computer from his leather briefcase, ready to document everything and coordinate the appropriate response. "Ma'am, how would you like me to proceed with addressing this situation and its consequences?" Zuri looks around the room thoughtfully, taking in the shocked faces, the phones still recording every moment, the palpable tension, and the profound weight of the teachable moment that's unfolding. "Let's begin by examining exactly which company policies were violated here and determining the appropriate consequences for those violations." Zuri addresses Kevin first, her voice carrying the natural authority of someone who has built a successful company from nothing and is accustomed to making decisions that affect hundreds of employees and their families. "As the manager of this location, you faced a clear moral choice between upholding our company's non-discrimination policies and appeasing a customer making explicitly racist demands. You consciously chose to prioritize short-term profit over basic human dignity. Kevin pleads desperately, his entire career and financial future flashing before his eyes like a drowning man's life review. Ms. Brown, please try to understand my position. I was attempting to maintain peace and keep all customers satisfied. Mrs. Sterling represents such a significant portion of our monthly revenue that losing her business could seriously impact our profitability. Zuri cuts him off with surgical precision that leaves no room for argument or negotiation. Our company's core values, which are prominently displayed in every location and clearly outlined in every employee handbook, explicitly state that every guest deserves respect and dignified treatment, regardless of race, religion, appearance, or perceived social status. You violated that fundamental principle when you chose money over morality. David hands Zuri a thick manila folder, his expression grim with the weight of documented evidence. Kevin's employment record shows 3 previous discrimination complaints over the past 18 months that were systematically dismissed due to Mrs. Sterling's financial influence and her explicit threats to take her considerable business elsewhere. Zuri nods, her decision already made with the clarity that comes from strong moral convictions. Kevin, your employment with Lux Wellness Group is terminated effective immediately. David will escort you from the premises after you surrender all access cards, keys, uniforms, and company property. Kevin's world collapses in real time as he realizes the magnitude of his miscalculation. But I have a family to support, a mortgage payment due next week. Mrs. Sterling, please tell her how valuable and dedicated I've been to this location's success over the years. Veronica, desperately trying to distance herself from the sinking ship of Kevin's career, snaps at him with cold dismissal. Don't you dare drag me into your employment problems. That's strictly between you and your former employer. Zuri turns her laser focus to Veronica, who visibly shrinks under the weight of impending consequences she never imagined possible. Mrs. Sterling, your membership privileges at all 48 Lux Wellness Group properties are permanently revoked, effective immediately and without possibility of appeal. Veronica's face flushes bright red with a mixture of indignation, panic, and dawning comprehension of her social humiliation. You absolutely cannot do that to me. I spend over $12,000 here every month. I bring all my friends and their friends. You'll lose a fortune in revenue. Zuri's response is delivered with ice-cold precision that leaves no doubt about her authority or determination. As Chief Executive Officer and majority owner, I absolutely can and will revoke your membership. Your behavior today violated every community standard we uphold and every value we represent. Your assumption that money grants you the right to discriminate against other human beings is exactly the toxic attitude we refuse to enable in our spaces. The live stream audience erupts in digital celebration, comments flooding in with fire emojis, applause, and overwhelming praise for Zuri's decisive action. The viewer count continues climbing exponentially as the video spreads across multiple social media platforms like wildfire. Veronica attempts one final desperate gambit, her voice shaking with rage and terror at her complete loss of social standing. My husband's company does significant business with wellness chains throughout this entire region. I'll make absolutely sure you lose every single corporate contract you currently have. Zuri's smile is slight but utterly devastating in its confidence. Mrs. Sterling, your husband's company signed a 3-year exclusive wellness services contract with Lux Wellness Group just 6 weeks ago. I personally negotiated that deal over 4 months. Would you like me to call him right now and explain exactly why his wife is threatening his most important business partnership? Veronica's face goes completely pale as she realizes the full scope of her catastrophic miscalculation and the complete destruction of her perceived power. Everything she thought she knew about her position and influence was built on illusion. Manda Chen, emboldened by watching justice unfold and finding her voice strengthened by righteousness, speaks up clearly and firmly. Ms. Brown, Mrs. Sterling has done this exact same thing before, to other guests and staff members. I have audio recordings of previous incidents saved on my phone. Zuri nods with genuine appreciation for Amanda's courage and documentation. Amanda, please provide those recordings to David immediately. We'll be conducting a comprehensive investigation into the established pattern of discriminatory behavior at this location. David efficiently coordinates the next steps with professional precision. Security will escort Mrs. Sterling from the premises immediately. Kevin, you have exactly 15 minutes to collect your personal belongings from your office before permanent removal. Other customers watch in complete amazement as the power dynamic reverses totally before their eyes. Several begin applauding openly, their appreciation for justice finally being served, evident in their enthusiastic response to seeing accountability in action. Veronica, being escorted toward the exit by uniformed security, makes one final, pathetic attempt to save face and maintain some dignity. This isn't over. I'll sue for wrongful termination of membership. You can't treat paying customers this way. Zuri responds with calm finality that closes every possible avenue of appeal. Mrs. Sterling, I strongly encourage you to read Section 12 of the membership agreement you signed. Discriminatory behavior toward other guests or staff members results in immediate termination without refund. Our legal team will be delighted to discuss this matter with your attorneys. Phew. It's a day of great opportunity. As Veronica is led away, still protesting her treatment and threatening lawsuits, the remaining customers burst into sustained applause that echoes throughout the spa. The young woman live streaming shouts with pure joy. This is exactly the kind of justice we desperately needed to see today. With the immediate crisis resolved and justice decisively served, Zuri addresses the remaining customers and staff members with the hard-earned wisdom of someone who has transformed personal pain and systemic discrimination into positive change and empowerment for others. What happened here today wasn't really about spa policies, customer service protocols, or computer booking systems. It was fundamentally about assumptions, prejudice, and the moral courage required to stand up for what's right when it would be easier to remain silent. She looks thoughtfully around the room, making genuine eye contact with individuals who witnessed the entire confrontation from beginning to end. Mrs. Sterling made devastating assumptions about my identity, my worth, and my place in society based solely on my appearance and race. Kevin made equally damaging assumptions about whose comfort and satisfaction mattered more based purely on financial considerations. Those assumptions led directly to discriminatory treatment that was wrong on every conceivable level. Amanda, still processing the dramatic reversal of fortune and justice she witnessed, asks with genuine curiosity, "But how did you manage to stay so calm and composed through everything? I would have been screaming or crying or both." Zuri's smile is gentle but profoundly instructive, reflecting decades of experience navigating discrimination with strategic intelligence. My grandmother taught me that anger provides valuable information, not clear instruction. When people reveal their prejudices and assumptions so clearly and dramatically, staying calm allows you to respond strategically rather than just emotionally. Emotional responses can be easily dismissed as overreaction, but strategic responses create lasting change. A customer who filmed the entire incident with growing outrage asks an important question. What happens next? How do we prevent situations exactly like this from occurring again in the future? Zuri's response reflects years of hard-won experience building truly inclusive organizations that value human dignity above profit margins. Sustainable change happens through consistent daily actions and accountability, not dramatic one-time gestures or empty promises. We'll implement comprehensive bias training for all staff members, create robust reporting systems for discrimination incidents, establish clear consequences for violations of our inclusion policies, and, most importantly, create a culture where speaking up for justice is rewarded rather than punished. David takes detailed notes as Zuri continues her impromptu lesson in organizational change. But the most important transformation happens when individuals choose moral courage over personal comfort. Amanda risked her job security to support what was right. That customer chose to live stream and share this story with the world. Real change requires everyday courage from everyday people, willing to speak up when they witness injustice. The live streaming customer, still recording this powerful conclusion, asks a question that resonates with viewers around the world. What would you say to people who face discrimination but don't have your position, resources, or power to fight back effectively? Zuri's response comes from deep personal experience and painful lessons learned over decades of facing prejudice. Document everything you possibly can. Find allies wherever possible, even in unexpected places. Speak your truth calmly but firmly, even when your voice shakes with fear. And remember, your worth as a human being isn't determined by other people's prejudices, limitations, or narrow worldview. Sometimes the people who underestimate you most dramatically give you the greatest opportunity to prove them completely wrong. She turns back to Amanda with genuine appreciation and respect. What you did today required real moral courage and personal risk. You saw something wrong happening and chose to act, despite the potential consequences to your own security and livelihood. That's exactly how meaningful change begins and spreads throughout communities. Amanda wipes away tears of relief, validation, and hope. I just couldn't watch anymore. I've been in similar situations myself and know how isolating it feels. Zuri nods with deep understanding, born from shared experience. And because you spoke up today with such courage, you helped create a space where the next person facing discrimination won't have to face it alone, or without witnesses willing to stand up for justice and human dignity. Zuri's final message resonates with quiet but unmistakable power as she prepares to finally enjoy the relaxation and peace she originally came seeking. The next time any of you witness discrimination, harassment, or injustice in any form, remember that you have a fundamental choice. You can be a passive bystander who allows evil to flourish through inaction and silence, or you can be like Amanda Chen, someone who speaks truth to power even when it's personally risky and professionally dangerous. She looks directly at the camera, still recording, knowing her words will reach far beyond this spa's walls to touch lives around the world. To everyone who will watch this video later, I encourage you to share your own stories of discrimination and resistance. Injustice thrives in darkness and silence, but it dies when exposed to sunlight and truth-telling. With a slight twinkle in her eye and the first truly relaxed smile of the entire day, Zuri adds with perfect timing, "And Mrs. Sterling, if you happen to be watching this later from whatever exclusive club still accepts your membership, here's some free advice. Next time you assume someone doesn't belong somewhere or doesn't deserve basic respect, you might want to check whether they own the place first." The crowd erupts in delighted laughter, the remaining tension finally breaking completely as everyone appreciates the perfect irony and poetic justice of the situation's resolution. Remember, true power isn't about putting other people down or maintaining artificial barriers that divide us. Real power comes from lifting everyone up and creating a world where all people belong, thrive, and are treated with the dignity they deserve simply by virtue of being human. That's how we build the future our children deserve to inherit. As Zuri finally settles in for her well-deserved spa treatment, with Amanda personally and proudly attending to her needs, the live stream ends with tens of thousands of supportive comments and shares, flooding social media platforms around the globe. The story spreads rapidly across the internet with the hashtag #CheckWhoOwnsThePlace trending worldwide, inspiring countless others to share their own experiences with discrimination and to find courage in standing up against injustice, wherever they encounter it in their daily lives. Sometimes justice arrives with perfect timing, poetic irony, and just the right amount of satisfaction to restore faith in the possibility that good can triumph over evil when courage meets opportunity at exactly the right moment.